coverage and the really nice review. That was really cool.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me at this particular point. So first things first, I just want to check in with you. How are you doing at the moment?
I'm doing pretty well. There's a lot to do, but it's the good kind of anxiety when you have you do something and then this pops up, and it's the snowballing of activity that is ideally what happens when you release music. It's a much bigger problem if that's not happening.
It's keeping you busy. That's good to hear.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the response has been really cool so far. I think it is, it, it was a very long time coming putting this record out, and it's obviously a pretty demanding listen. There's kind of that little gestation period where you have to kind of wrap your head around it, and kind of let things take shape and have those experiences in your own way where you're able to just be there with the art and yeah, and see what kind of comes together for you and what maybe I don't fully get that thing yet. Maybe I need to revisit that. But it's a pretty good sign when overwhelmingly the consensus seems to be, at least even from like a few listens, like these guys did, like, for one thing, A Dream in Static was not like a flash in the pan fluke. These guys didn't come back with Chinese Democracy Part Two and uh, and took a million years to make something that wasn't worth listening to. It seems overwhelmingly like the consensus so far has been like, at the very least, this is at the level that they established earlier, and if anything, it's maybe a bit beyond that. We haven't fully grasped it yet, but it seems like something pretty formidable. So
Yeah, I've not
I can't
heard.
complain on that end.
Oh, absolutely. And I've not heard or read a single bad word about this obviously phenomenal album. So I have to ask, what is the overall band headspace like right now? Have you managed to come down from orbit yet?
Oh yes, yeah, no, it's not too hard to do that. Yeah, I mean, I'd say the overall headspace is, it's kind of a fine balance. I think for us on one level, making this record kind of what we wanted to do on certain levels with the Dream and Static, but weren't able to do through, lack of our own knowledge of, okay, if you want this sort of sound, you got to do this thing. So having had the experience to kind of correct those things and make it what we wanted, in more ways than not, was something on a very ground level that we were very happy with. So on one level, that's a thing. And the responses, even just reading, like one or two nice comments a day or every couple days, certainly has a very affirming effect. But yeah, I mean, I think you kind of know that um, obviously stuff like this can be fleeting, and to keep the momentum going, as we were talking about, you have to really keep your head down, and it's good to bask for a little bit, but not too long. You gotta already on to the next thing, making sure that the tour that's coming up or whatever we're putting out next is going to be successful and not uh, left to the last minute and causing huge stresses, as can often be the case, especially in an ambitious project. Yeah.
Yeah, that momentum is so damn important. There is no stopping. And we are still talking really early days as well. Bear in mind, we're talking about Let the Truth Speak In. It's only been out since the 17th of November. It's the
Yeah.
13th of December. We've not even done a full month yet. So there's plenty of time to sort of let the dust settle on it and then we'll see what the overall reactions are like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think we have a person that we worked with prior to like the current era of the band, in a management position, had the slogan "Think Long," and I mean it's kind of self-explanatory, but I think that if any record kind of merits that attitude, I think it's this record. I think it's going to be an album that is going to be doing work for us into the future and not just right now. But Yeah, I think we know that this is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. And we're hoping to, for everything that went into this, kind of really uh, put everything we have into over the next year and a half and beyond, just pounding the pavement with it, whether on the road or putting out cool pieces of content around it that kind of further the life story of the record. But yeah, no, it's super early into the process, and I think in many ways it's very hard to have an opinion on even like what I would call like a normal album and just like okay, I've listened to it a couple times. It's probably like a 7.8 out of 10 or something like that. I can't tell you the number of records that like have become classic albums for me that I forced myself to re-listen to like 8 years after they came out. I'm like, oh wow, this was actually really profound. Like Deliverance from Opeth is one of those records for me. Everyone's like, oh, it's too long, it's too meandery,
Hmm.
and I just had like one day when it hit me in the right space, like 13 years after it came out. No, actually, this is a classic album. This has the best riffs ever written on it. So yeah, no, yeah, it's a fine balance of appreciating the moment of it, keeping your head down, being focused on the next thing, but also realizing that the full life story of this album is not going to play out in 3 weeks. That if things are going as they're supposed to be going, one thing will lead to the next, and we have to just be ready and present to meet those, those opportunities or whatever comes along.
But how, as a group, do you manage expectations around what you want to achieve with this release? As you've said yourself, it's a big ask for a listener. We live in attention-struggling times
Yep.
and all of that. So how do you manage your own personal expectations?
It's different for every member of the band. I think we have, I mean, obviously, writing the kind of music we write, we are tumultuous, like emotionally intense individuals. And from that, I think you can make some really cool art that has like some very gripping feeling in it. But you can also have one micro thing happen over the course of a day, and then it sends you into an existential downward spiral. Um, but it's different for every member. We all manage it differently. And I guess what I would say is I think what my outlook on it is that people it's kind of similar to what I was just saying, that I think so what you were saying about the attention economy as it is right now, that is absolutely a thing. But as with any kind of sudden change, it's not like that change just comes to pass and then, all right, everything going forward, bands aren't doing albums anymore and every piece of content is going to be 30 seconds or less. I think people by and large that care about this music don't want that. I think
Mm.
there's going to be, for any sudden change, there will be a counter movement or something to that. Or even if it's not a movement, there will still be a niche demand for those things. So I'm not worried about it on that end, but at the same time, I do think there's a fatiguing of like kind of in the same way, like if you're hungry and you just keep reaching for a bag of chips and you're shoveling in the potato chips or crisps or whatever, and you're not getting a lot of nourishment out of it, you're going to feel like crap, or you're going to feel unfulfilled. And I think people on some level are looking for things that they have to chew on a bit. I think that is still a demand that people have, and I know from having made music for as long as I have, and gone through all the different processes of discovering a new artist, digesting the music, kind of living with it, coming back to it. Like that's such an enjoyable process, both as an artist or just a listener. It's such a there's such a sanctity to that, and I really do think that and I've actually had to go through this process with this album as a person who was hearing it in different phases of completion, hearing the master and being like, oh, this is pretty cool, this thing bothers me, I don't know how I feel about that, and channeling those things out and kind of being able to hear it more as a whole. It's a really exciting and fun process, and I think in a world where most of what's coming out is churn it out kind of disposable content, I think there is really an attraction and an allure to those standalone pieces that are more like a big feature presentation that you kind of have to, as I was saying, you kind of have to chew on. But it's got all the nutrition, it's got all the food groups represented. It's going to be something that you're going to be able to come back to. You're going to be able to enjoy now. You're going to be able to come back to it in 3, 5, 10 years and have a completely different experience with it. And you only have to buy it once. You only have to get this album once, but you're going to be able to. It's going to be able to live with you. And I think that's not something that's going to go away.
I
So
think
that's a very wordy way of saying that, but I do think there's something to that. Just because micro content is a thing right now, I don't think the desire for a richer and kind of meatier experience with an album and with art is going to go away for people.
But do you not find that then you struggle on the other side of putting out music and being in a band and wanting your music and art to be appreciated, which of course is that micro content, be it playlists and stuff like that
Yeah.
on streaming services and social media and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, so it is a consistent struggle in a world that is not built around that, that is not equipped to or encouraging of long form less immediate content. I mean, we have been fortunate that we have a really good team around us that has pitched to playlists, and we've gotten on some. I think we're on progressive metal and a handful of others right now. But yeah, I mean, there are, like, even with the record pre-release, there were certain songs we couldn't make instant grat tracks on Spotify because they were over the track length. And a funny anecdote also on that end is there are a couple bands in our general sphere of like progressive stuff, and they don't write songs anywhere near as long as us. And they've had this problem with Spotify lately where Spotify has basically, they've gone up like 3,000 or 4,000 monthly listeners for each of them, but it's because Spotify picked an interlude track for them and started showing it to people. So their number one song for like these two bands are like these 30-second interludes that are completely unrepresentative of the band's music as a whole. And it's just like, wow, this is how ill-equipped streaming services are for anyone in like an arty kind of style of music. But yeah, I mean, that kind of goes to show you that it's a fine balance. I think we have to be a little bit, we have to be willing a little bit to play the content game as far as putting out content. And when I say content, I mean like a video of, okay, here's Ben in the studio, drumming this part or in the rehearsal space. Here's Jamie, our guitarist, talking about how he wrote this thing, but not allowing the content to be content and trying to be more consistent with it than we have been to this point. But the art to be art and not a disposable piece of content.
It is a very fine balancing act, and I don't really think there's anyone that's quite learned it yet.
Yeah, and again, like the whole, it's really hard to play at the Spotify game and Bandcamp and all that stuff, because even right now we're kind of living through these things radically changing, and it's been unsustainable, not just for the bands, but for the way that these platforms, I would say, have exploited the resources. And yeah, I mean, I think it's currently a model that is evolving, and it's probably going to go somewhere more in like an artist to patron, like the Patreon and whatnot kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, we're seeing it's you can't just kind of mold what you are to that thing, because I think by the time you do it, it's probably going to be a whole different paradigm.
The ever-changing algorithms.
Yeah, it can feel demotivating when like you see how trivial the decision making is as to what gets seen or what doesn't get seen or playlisted. It can kind of feel like someone just landed in like a god role where they're able, someone in like, yeah, in Sweden or something at their desk is like, all right, this band is going to have success, this band is not going to have success. And maybe a person who's never played an instrument or anything like that. And yeah, but that is kind of what it is.
It is what it is. So take me back to the origins of Let the Truth Speak's inception. Specifically, I want to focus on your vision.
Mhm.
Did you have a clear-cut one at the very start?
Well, the very clear cut vision I had was I was having a beer with our keyboard player after a show in Montreal, and he likes to wax poetic on certain things, and I don't always know if it's going to get to an arrival point, but he did say at some point in that conversation, my ears perked up, let the truth speak. And I think he was just talking about like art in general. And I was like, all right, stop. I'm writing that down on my phone. That's something. And it was just like one of those phrases where I didn't immediately know what it meant. I mean, there's a face value to it. Like, like let this speak for itself. But I knew that there was something profound about that. And I think as we got into writing this record and kind of seeing the state of where the world was, the idea that truth is kind of something that's called into question in a way that feels very off the mark, that like in the reality that it's almost a cliche to talk about, you basically tune into the version of reality that you want to accept. And one review of the record I thought put this really well, and I think was pretty close to our intent, that truth is something that should speak for itself, that truth is not a person coming forward with their honest experience with something that you have no experience with, should be, at the very least, given the benefit of the doubt. And if not, further than that, that person's experience should be taken more seriously than you saying, well, it doesn't seem that way to me, or like that seems like it's not the case. So I would say the idea of truth speaking for itself was a big point on this record, and I think each track kind of in its own way grapples with that. I mean, you have the instrumentals. One thing that we really like to do is the pairing of an instrumental song with a title, and allowing the title, the interaction between what you're hearing and just that one collection of words, to paint a picture and to put you in a certain frame of mind. So, but what if we're wrong? And All We Knew and Ever Loved, I think, are pretty good examples of that. And in a very different way, Watching the Earth Sink is certainly a pretty evocative title. But yeah, I think they're all kind of different reflections on this theme of, in certain ways, with the title "Let the Truth Speak," it's a little bit of a call to stepping back and being a little bit humble in moments when we want to, maybe we disagree with something, or we want to say, well, yeah, but I think this is the case. And very often that's not allowing maybe the most important voices to be heard on something, on an important topic, or diluting what is being said by a person like, maybe I have no background, or if I were talking about, I don't know, jazz, or like open heart surgery, I would have nothing to contribute to the conversation there. So I would want whoever is more of an expert on these topics to make their sides heard. That was a little bit of a diversion, but yeah, I think you've seen it probably in the press releases about the album being a bit more of like a humanity as a whole, we versus I, less introspective and more overarching in what, how we seem. I have my cat yelling at me. A bit more overarching in the scope of what the music is dealing with on a thematic angle. And I think with that more overarching kind of view, I think we knew that the music and the collaborations had to come from more of a perspective than just four guys in the Northeast of the United States. It had to be storytellers and people from a very wide range of musical traditions and all over the world, all different backgrounds. And that was a big part of the vision. Yep.
Speaking of collaborations, so what did you do? Did you effectively make a long list of people or artists or bands and so on that you would like to work with, and then just reached out and ticked them off as they came along?
Um, that that's probably a little bit more straightforward than what we had to deal with. I think in the beginning it started off that way, but then the pandemic happened and everything kind of like we had basically like a first round of vocalists and collaborators lined up. Some that I think people would be pretty like, whoa, like that person. But yeah, I mean, all it took was the world changing in a pretty significant way, people having to move, go live with family again, or just falling into crippling depression or something. You know, a pandemic can certainly do that, to throw everything into upheaval. So we reached a point like a couple of years into the record where most collaboration slots were not filled, and we had to back up and figure out a different approach to make that happen. So that's kind of where our guitarist Jamie's 1,000 comment vocalist outreach post on Facebook came into play. And that was insane. He took like 4 to 6 months to go through it all. And we discovered a lot of amazing vocalists through that. A couple that were, we didn't do it. We did it for very, I would say, wholesome purposes, like wholesome, productive purposes. But we are also huge fans of So Bad It's Good that my guitarist had like a tier list or like a color coded thing. And he was like, all right, green, various shades of green. If it's really dark green, then like this is really good. We gotta, check out this person or take them very seriously. If it's really dark red, then we maybe need to check them out for other reasons. But yeah, no, I mean, that's where a lot of the vocalists that we ended up working with on this record came from. So Ketra, the woman singer, and just a point of clarification there, because it is a little bit confusing. She is actually from Ottawa, Canada. I know that there is a Ketra from Malawi, and that's not her. But she's a really amazing Canadian vocalist, singer songwriter. So we discovered her from that. We discovered the Indian singer on the third track, Pritam. We were encouraged to kind of reapproach Fire from the Gods and AJ from that. We'd known about him, but we didn't know his music that well. And having people say like, you should really check out his stuff, see, like, we think it could work, and they were absolutely right. So there was him, there was and Gennady, the vocalist on Vespers and Let the Truth Speak, the song. Unbelievable, unreal talent. It was a very different process from A Dream in Static. I think in some ways it was almost a little puzzling to us. I think there were circumstances that were in play with this record that were not for the first album, like the pandemic and whatnot. But it, as a completely unknown band, it was kind of like a very straightforward process, a bit like what you were saying in the beginning with The Dream in Static. It was like we just reached out to these bigger singers and we're like, all right, let's, we got nothing to lose, and it came together. And then coming into this record, it was far more complicated, and not as straightforward. But I think ultimately we got the people we needed to get. I think it brought a really unique dimension to the record to have these singers and these artists that you're discovering alongside us that you may not be familiar with, but are lending a completely unique stamp to each of these songs.
Yeah, the familiarity thing for sure. It's very unique in that sense for a lot of people. But I have to ask, considering, there was some complications and it wasn't as straightforward as perhaps we would have liked, was there ever a point where you thought, okay, our scope of thinking here is too big. We need to step back and maybe reappraise this, or were you just, we're going to do this no matter what?
No, that happened at many points. We felt we were in over our heads. Uh, we were in over our heads at many moments. There were many times that almost on a day-to-day basis, individual members felt like I just can't do this. Like this is too much of an existential trial. This is more than we bargained for. I think we went into the record with really good intentions to do this in a more efficient way, and we learned from working with David Castillo and Jens Bogren in Sweden. Two of the guys like were right under their noses for recording and mixing, and they learned a lot of great stuff. So we said, all right, let's try to do this, take what we learned from them. This will be more efficient with resources. We'll maybe save a little bit of money not having to it's funny to think about it that way with how things went. We'll save a little bit of money doing it ourselves. And it was just, maybe we could have done that if this were a normal rock or metal album that wasn't so over the top into the nines in all the ways it ended up being. But we bit off so much more than we could chew with that. And I think we knew that pretty early on we were in over our heads and we had to course correct. And so we ended up kind of having to build a team around us to do this insane album. And that in and of itself is a really uniquely stressful thing. On the first record, we had basically an overseer of the record, David Castillo. He kind of made sure, all right, on a daily basis where one of us is feeling overwhelmed or there's all this stuff to do, nope, we're gonna come and hit the pavement, we're gonna get it done. And here it's like we have the guy who's doing the bass production, we have the guy who's doing the guitar and the keyboards, and there wasn't that same overseer of the whole project. That fell on us largely. And not having that singular vision or that chaperone for a record that is very ambitious fills many days with a lot of existential dread.
For you on a personal level, then, taking all that into account, what was possibly the most challenging aspect of creating the record overall?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that the other guys point out that I think is true is that each song was kind of almost like its own record production, that they were so different from each other. And it's not just like, all right, tracking drums for everything, tracking bass, guitars. Maybe this song has a guest guitar solo or something, and maybe this song has like a special something guest. It's like every song. I think one thing we really wanted to double down on from the first record is we called ourselves cinematic rock, but we only had those cinematic elements in 3 songs, like with the more movie score orchestration. So we wanted to, a lot of people have called themselves cinematic synths, and so we wanted to say like, all right, fine, you don't believe us, we're doing it here. This is cinematic. So we wanted to basically bring that more overarchingly across the record and not sound like we had, all right, they have their post-rock, genty side and they have their cinematic side. We wanted to integrate everything into each other, and that meant bringing some of those additional orchestration or instrumentalist elements into almost every song, and that made almost every song like its own huge project in a way that very few other records I think end up being. And so when people are asking us like, you were away for this long, like why did it take you this long? I mean, that's a big part of it. It was kind of like making, I don't know, like 6 to 8 albums in one album. Yeah, and many of the songs didn't have the same, even if you're hearing strings on this song and strings on this song, maybe this song had just a full string section. This song had strings, percussion, and brass or something. So that's its own separate thing. This song had horns and that it wasn't there was very few kind of catch-all things that got everything done at the same time. It was a lot of vertical production where this has this other one has this. Yeah.
It's an incredible undertaking, but the end result does speak for itself. That's the thing. You can reflect on the stresses and the work and all that, but ultimately it exists and it's out there and it's
Yes.
being loved by everybody. Um,
Yeah, no, I
so
mean, I say, and it's a very earnest thing. I'm very, very grateful that we were just able to finish this, get this out, and have something that we are, at least personally, very happy with, which is no small undertaking. We are almost unreasonably self-critical. So to have just been able to, it took forever, but to have been able to check that huge box off, get it out there, and have people really enjoy it. I mean, that's kind of the cherry on top there. But yeah, no, I think there were so many moments in which it was unclear if we were going to reach that finish line, and a lot of uncertainty and doubt from there. But yeah, as you said, we ultimately did it, and I don't think we would ever do this. I don't think we'd ever put ourselves through this again. But yeah, I'm incredibly grateful that we were able to finish it up and make something that we and other people are really connecting with.
would you ever use the word proud? And I ask this because ultimately it is one of the most startling, brilliant releases of 2023.
Would I use the word that I'm proud of it?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we're tremendously proud of it. Yeah, I mean, we are the consummate band that makes the music we would want to listen to, whatever craziness that might be. And yeah, ideally, you do. We make it. I would say most artists that are kind of worth their salt, they make it for themselves on some level. Obviously, art is meant to be shared, and we want people to enjoy it. But you've got to kind of be happy with it on some level as the creator. And I would say this is one of the first things, at least for me personally, that I've been really proud of as a creator. Dream and Static, I'm proud of it. But I think it wasn't, there were ways in which I wanted certain things to be that were not as much how they turned out. But this got much closer to that benchmark. Yeah, I would say we're extremely proud of it.
I'm glad to hear that. Okay, looking a little bit forward now and into 2024, because we are at the end of 2023. What can we possibly expect from Earthside? What can you kind of reveal to me in regards to what you would like potentially to do next year?
Yeah. So I mean, for everything that went into this, we have to really rise to the occasion and just kind of hit everything ground running we possibly can. We're lining up some festivals. We plan to do a lot of touring, bringing a really unique show out on the road that we're currently putting together from a multimedia aspect. People, you know, what we do, it often begs the natural question, well, how do you do this live? Like,
Mm.
believe it or not, we don't like show up at these people at our like singers' doors, blindfold them and throw them in a truck, and then they're like, we kick them out. All right, come on, we have a set now. We don't do that. But yeah, we have a way that we represent their unique contributions to songs from an audio visual and lighting standpoint that projects them alongside us performing, and has this cool visual lighting element that kind of works its way throughout a set. We don't want to view what we're doing as we're just putting on like a bare minimum rock show for you, because that's not what this music calls for. At the
Mm.
same time, we don't have the resources to bring you Hans Zimmer live yet. That's the goal. We want that. That's the kind of experience we ultimately want to put on. But we're starting to build that out little by little right now. We want, even at a smaller level, people to walk away from an Earthside show thinking like, you know, I didn't just see some rock band, like four guys on stage playing guitars and drums. This was an experience. This was an immersive, special, unique thing. So it's going to be a mix of kind of honing that to the highest level we possibly can, and as scrappy as we can be, bringing that to as many people and as wide a span of geographic locations as we possibly can. And also probably putting out quite a bit of cool additional supplemental content around the record. I think some of these songs you really, as a listener, I think people are like who is doing this? Who is doing what? How did this come together? And I think it would be really cool to give each song its own kind of moment in the sun. As we were talking about, each song is almost like its own production on a very big level. So yeah, I think we want to give people a unique window into each of those specific pieces of work.
Shine a spotlight on each individual track, tour far and wide. I mean, that's going to keep you incredibly busy in 2024, and that's all we want to hear.
Yeah, it's going to be probably not a lot of sleep, but a lot of moving around, a lot of playing, I'm looking forward to that. I think this material from a drum standpoint I didn't realize that this was going to be quite a bit more onerous than the first record, but I'm excited to. It also means that I kind of get to push myself, so it's been really fun to play out that material live. It calls for a higher level of stamina and a higher level of like how the heck, like these guys wanted me to do something absolutely absurd in this spot, and I can kind of do it in the studio, but like how do I make this work when I'm like 35 minutes into a set and like my arms bothering me? But no, I mean, we also really love playing live. We love it. We're not the simplest band live, but we love the connection that you get that is completely unique to the live experience when sharing music with people.
I hope I get to see you play live next year at some point. If you are become my neck of the woods, obviously it is the UK, so it is a little bit of a trek, but you never know.
I think I think UK will be well serviced. We have so much of our operation out there. We already have a couple things that are lined up, but yeah, we will. I'm pretty sure we'll see you out there.
Good. All right, one more for you, Ben, and it's just generalized as because we're in December. And then, of course, the end of the year. And it is the festive period for many different people in many different ways. So I wanted to ask you, what does an Earthside Christmas look like?
I mean, it's probably a bit different for everyone. I think for for my family, it's probably going to be getting some form of Chinese or Thai food and seeing a movie. But I mean, I think we're going to have like a little bit of a break on our end, but we're not going to be able to take too much of a break because we have a lot of prep that we have to get together very quickly for the tour in end of January, February. The music industry as a whole goes into a coma when the Christmas music turns on. None of us particularly like Christmas music, unless it's like I don't know, like I Declare War, like the metal bands that like growl over Christmas songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have to kind of, while that industry time away is going, we have to be churning away and making sure that we're getting everything to where it needs to be so that when we hit the ground running in 2024, everything is primed for action.
There it is. As long as you get some time off, that's what I want to hear. But of course, just remind people that The Truth Speak, it is out now, out as of November 17th. A phenomenal release that deserves everyone's attention and will no doubt, if it hasn't already appeared in people's top lists, end of the year, all of that arbitrary stuff, it will still appear in plenty more before the year is wrapped up. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. I really appreciate it, Carl. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.